Friends, thank you for watching my channel. I just want to remind you, if you need wallpaper, go to www.wallpaperboulevard.com. Tell them Spencer sent you. In fact, if you use my hashtag, Spencer Colgan is wallpaper, they'll be sure to give you 10% off at your checkout. No matter how much you order, they have a wide selection of wallpaper. Check it out. Tell them I said hello. I'm going to try to keep this short and simple. This wallpaper will not come off of the wall without significantly damaging the wall underneath. But the hanger put it right on the sheetrock. To make matters worse, it's very thin material. And so even if you were to try to take this off, the material is paper, literally thinner than paper thin. You can see the backing attached to the sheetrock. Whether you want to paint this or wallpaper over it, you're left with the decision on how to prep this wall. If you wanted to paint over this, you have to come to the conclusion that this isn't coming off unless you rip down the sheetrock, put up new sheetrock, and get to work. On this wall, theoretically, you could put 1/4-inch sheetrock over this, bring out your outlets, pull your trim off, you'd still come flush with that. Nobody would notice. But you can come up with an easier solution, and here's what I'm going to do. We're going to leave the paper on. We're going to tie down these rips with oil-based primer or shellac. I have both. Either one will do it. We want to seal the paper here. This paper is opposed to receiving compound or paint. Okay, so you want to seal this. And you want to make sure this roughness doesn't show through your new wallpaper or your paint. So if you're going to paint, here's what you would do. You leave this on, tear off the loose stuff, put a coat of oil-based primer on this, Kills Original, or shellac, which is made from different companies. I prefer Bin, B-I-N, Bin. Let it dry. Put a little skim coat, patch this with drying compound. It's all flat. This paper here is different than this paper here. Okay? This will receive, you can paint over this, but we're not going to do that. Don't keep peeling at this. It'll always have lift off. It just never stops. And there's no need to be meticulous at this point. Just tie this down with the following. Or, for those of you who want to spend more money and be able to work on it 15 minutes after application, use this. My choice for this particular project is Kills. Okay. I went right over it. And I hope you do too. That's it. Let it dry. this is not the way to paint. So, for those of you who have watched my painting videos, where you approach painting very methodically with the roller up and down, we're going to be wallpapering the wall. And so, I'm just putting the primer on the wall. And this is our kills. The wallpaper is now part of the wall, never to come off. This is not an irresponsible way to proceed. It was irresponsible of the hanger to put it on sheetrock, unfinished sheetrock. Which means he didn't prep the raw sheetrock and he didn't prep the finished compound. The finished compound has to be sealed. It's dusty, etc. I'm a little surprised that it stayed up. So the wallpaper wouldn't come down. We're going to go over the wallpaper with an oil-based primer, and we are going to do what I call nowadays Plan B. And Plan B is to skim coat over this oil-based primer, and then we have to pay attention to the seams. This is where it becomes where you don't want to do it. You can't just paint over these seams. That's the only problem. But other than that, this is going to become part of the wall. And we're going to put a very thin fiber tape over the seams and then compound over them so that the seams never come back up. I covered all of the walls. I'm waiting for them to dry. And now, as they dry, do you perceive any danger to our project thus far? Can we just go over it now with compound and hope for the best? What do you think? Well, how about all of the seams at the top where the wallpaper was cut down there? Do you think this is going to need to be sealed? Now I'm going to go around and seal this with caulking. And I'll be using clear caulking. Because I'm not doing the crown molding. That's a cream colored paint. I'll be using clear because I will be painting the wall up against the crown. And the clear caulking, the upper edge that touches the crown, will reflect the color of the crown molding and not flash a white line. I understand in the UK they don't have clear caulking. People are talking about my videos in the UK. And so a decorator servicing store emailed me and said, where do you get this clear caulking? And not to be funny, but I was surprised. No clear caulking in the UK? Really? But it's the truth. And so if I were in the UK, what would I use? I'll tell you what. Fine, no clear caulking. Ma'am, I gotta paint your crown molding white because I'm going to use a white sealant, paintable of course, and I'm going to have to consequently paint your crown molding. And since your crown molding meets your white sealing, the white flashing at the top of the crown where it meets the ceiling won't matter because it's white. Although you have to be a very neat caulker so that you don't see somebody's ugly caulking line when you enter the room. We've seen that before. But you understand. Clear caulking to seal the elements, the moisture, the cold, the heat from penetrating the seams. If this is vulnerable at all, which it's not, because we just tied down this paper to the wall. But if it's vulnerable anywhere, it's the whole bottom seam, all around every penetration. These are penetrations here. And this now all has to be caulked, the whole thing, where the paper meets the trim. Okay? And then we can call this a new wall. And after we put our skin on it, we could call it a new skin. A completely new wall. The paper is buried. Everywhere the wallpaper has been cut, or every seam at the top and at the bottom needs to be caulked. This caulking will prevent moisture. Killer. Moisture is a killer. And let's take a look. Let's prove it. If you tap on this, you'll hear a difference. You hear that? Listen. You hear the, watch this. That's because it's loose up here. That's because the moisture has entered the room and attacked the wallpaper where it's most vulnerable. And that is where it ends, because this is covered. It's covered, right? But up here, it stops. And this is where you gotta caulk it. I'm going through this theatrical lesson because don't overlook this procedure. It's very important, okay? I had a teacher in college. I won't mention Frank Sorrentino by name because I don't want to, great guy, I don't want to embarrass the man. He was a professor of political science. He just retired. But he was my mentor. And he would always say, all right. He'd come in and he would say, the guy was the most energized professor I ever had. You really got your money's worth from him. 55-minute classes. The guy would come in, have his coffee, put down his blazer. My professors always wore blazers. Not like today's professors. They come in jeans. That's no professor. Come in a blazer. Okay, what I'd like to discuss today. All right. He'd say, all right. So in my senior year of college, I took what was called a thesis seminar. And it was a 4-credit course. Oh! It was a 4-credit class that began in September. And it ended in December. But it was all about your thesis and the topics and pretty much how to write it, how to go about writing it. It had to be 50 pages. So I wrote my senior thesis on the chief legislator. And that was, my major was political science, US political science, you know? And my thesis was on presidential power. So, US president, so how powerful is the president? Well, it came down to this. He's not that powerful. That's really what the thesis had to be. Because the professor would say, he's not that powerful. So, anyway, so you had to start presenting the material in the classroom at a round table. So, when my turn came up, the professor was there, 8 students were there. So I started my first speech with, all right, what I'd like to do today, all right. And I wound up getting an A in the class, but I'll tell you what, I don't think he liked that. He sounded like he was a real Brooklyn guy, but he wasn't a Brooklyn guy. His family was off the boat Italian, and I mean literally off the boat. And hey, for all I know, he could have been from Brooklyn, but I think he grew up in Manhattan. But anyway, he did a lot of, all right, all right, all right, all right. It's just one of those things, you know, you grow up with these idiosyncrasies in your behavior and speech. And, you know, all right, all right. Anyway, we're sealing everything. That's the point of this. Even in the corners, don't forget these corners. And don't forget these hard to get to areas. These are the areas 6 months later, excuse me, you gotta come back and fix this. Don't forget, wallpaper is cut in corners. So you wanna get the caulking in the corner. All right? Very good. Now, it's all sealed. Our windows are sealed. Look at that. Our corners, sealed. Doorways, sealed. Crown, sealed. Crown. All of this. Now we're ready to go. Now you good painters and decorators out there, I know what you're thinking. You people are literally among the hardest working people there are. And on top of you, and on top of me, are the do-it-yourselfers who don't do this for a living. And they gotta sit through these videos, you know, and they work hard. This is what we're here to do. Perfectionist work. I'm talking to the pro. If you say, Spencer, this is too much, this is my answer. You know this has to get done. You walk away from the job. You tell the customer, this is what's got to be done. I can't get this off to make it cost effective for you and profitable to me. So I'm going to oil base this. I'm going to shellac it. I'm going to caulk all the penetrations. This is your price. Yes, it's a lot more to do this than just take the wallpaper off. But if the customer doesn't want it, you say, I'm sorry, I can't do the job. I can't do it. Don't be afraid to get your price and demand it, because this is what it takes. Our walls are ready now to get skim coated. Do you want to paint over this? Check this out. Look at this. I mean, the oil does a great job. In fact, in this case, I've used oil and alcohol because I used 1.5 gallons of oil and then it started running out. So I wound up adding, you see that little can there? I added the shellac to it, you know, finishing it off. But the point is this. You don't want to be painting over that. I mean, this repair is not cheap, but it is a permanent repair back to wall restoration after some ignoramus ruins your walls by failing to size the walls prior to installing wallpaper. Be careful, you contractors out there. You can get sued for this. You put wallpaper directly on somebody's walls on sheetrock, and they have to do this. You know, I could see somebody making a case where you should be liable for the monies that get expended on this. Okay. Now, what are we using? This is joint compound mud, okay? So, now, I should not be using my drill for this. My mud mixer is, of course, home, right? They sell mud mixers for this type of stress on the machine, but I'm breaking it up. Can you even tell that the motor's on? Just kidding. Okay, let's see. Ooh. Put the bucket between your boots, because it will spin depending on the power you got going on. Add some water if you want to give your battery a break. You want to do this, you want to mix it up. Make that creamy. Look at that. Beautiful. Seam. Seam. Joint compound over it and mesh over that. Now, what is the mesh that I'm using? It's super thin. Key. This is key, okay? Key to your success. This is super thin stuff, okay? If you get the thick stuff, you'll be in trouble, please. I'm just trying to help you here, okay? You want the tape, the fiber, F-I-B-A, fiber tape. That goes on thin and doesn't require a lot of bedding. Bedding is the layer you put on after it. For the do-it-yourselfer, this is a 6-inch taping knife. This is a caulk. Let me take you up to the repair. We got to be done real quick here. We need thin. You see how thin that is? You see? It's right here. That's where your mud is. You can barely see the edge of that. That's how thin you want that. It's called fiber tape. Fiber, F-I-B-A, mesh. By the way, the tape that I'm using for this project is ultra thin, and it's from a company named Adfors, A-D-F-O-R-S, Adfors. And it's thin fiber tape, F-I-B-A tape. Perfect finish, ultra thin drywall joint tape. You want it thin because if you go thick, you're going to have to be putting more compound on it, okay? I can't stress enough, get the thin one, please. Okay, let's talk about repairs on the wall. Now, these walls you're looking at will get painted. Okay? You see my mesh there? Okay. Now it might happen that when you put oil over this, you lose your seam of the wallpaper, which is a good thing if you lose it. But not a good thing if you can't find it and you're taping over the wrong area. If you don't know how to find your seams, before you do it, mark the floor with a pencil at every seam. Just make a mark, okay? And if you look close, you can find it if you really look close. See that? Okay, you got the point. Now, as I said, okay, so this wall, we were cut off. My battery died. This wall we're going to be painting along with every wall in here except for this one. Okay? So these have to be coated repeatedly to hide our mesh and to get rid of the stippled effect given us by the oil. Although it's not terrible, believe me. This actually feels like a baby's rear. But we're going to coat it because we're going to be building this up to hide this. So consequently, we're going to be putting 1/8 of an inch of compound on these walls, okay? Not a big deal, 1/8 of an inch. Now, this wall, it will get wallpaper. And this was the wall that it was our test wall. So I'm going to show you how to fix this. Okay, remember, we got an oil skin on here now. We can just fix this right away, no big deal. And this, what you're looking at here, is the closest that I'm ever going to get to luxurious living, okay? I saw some very nice fish jumping out of this water, but this is actually the closest I'm gonna get to ever seeing anything like this from a house, except, of course, if I'm working in it. So let's, unless, of course, I hit the lottery, by the way, on that joke, and I did play the lottery, actually. I played the lottery today, and I told the woman, I said, if I hit it, she goes, yeah, you'll come back and give me. I said, no. I will never come back, and you will never see me again. Okay, so how are we gonna fix this? First of all, okay. Lightly shave it off. Don't go crazy, don't get out your sanding block because this is 95% cured. You can still feel, you just know it's not 100% cured. So your sanding thing would get gunked up, but certainly cured enough for us to do this. Check this out. Hey, I'm getting messages from all over the country, from do-it-yourselfers, and I'm telling you, I am impressed what do-it-yourselfers have learned how to do from my videos. Okay, see this? See? We're almost 100%. You know, you put a thin wallpaper over this repair, you're not gonna see this, okay? All right, you're good to go. Fortunately, we don't have a thin wallpaper. Our wallpaper is thick. You see this? Off camera, I put a little compound on it. Right? Pretty good. Now, I'll just tell you, this is ready for wallpaper. I just have to prime this with a sealant, and then this is already primed with oil, and I can hang wallpaper right over this. Some professionals say, no, you can't put wallpaper, the oil makes it very slick. Okay, wait till it cures, scuff it up. Make it rough. Take sanding on a sanding pole, scuff it up. Scratch it up if you're so inclined. But I know that it will take wallpaper. But you can also scuff that up. I am not for wearing masks every time. You're going to make this friable, first of all. Now you're going to have oil particles floating in the air right into your lungs, I will put my reputation on this. You can hang paper right over this. I just thought of something. I guess what I should say to the do-it-yourselfer, no need to tape over these seams. You're hanging wallpaper right over this, okay? Just go right over it. All I gotta do is prime these hot spots. That's it. Seal them, I mean. I use the word primer, but I mean seal. Now, being that this is the wall that's getting wallpaper, we can now proceed to put a wallpaper sizing agent over it. What are you going to use? Well, you can go over the hot spots, which is where I put joint compound. You can go over that with guards, G-A-R-D-Z. You can also go over it with the oil that's already on it. But in this case, I'm going to opt to go over this with guards, G-A-R-D-Z. Here are my seams. What I'll do after this is mix 20-minute mud. I'll take a 10-inch knife over each one of them. You can see the joint compound shrinking and wrapping itself around the tape, allowing the tape to show itself over the sheetrock. I don't have time to play with this. The joint compound has served as a bed against which to put our mesh. Other than that though, here's what I gotta do. You see the edge of my tape? I gotta build that up like this. And I'm gonna do that with 20-minute mud with a 10-inch knife. Let me show you what I mean. Now, I'm not going to use I'm not going to use joint compound. I'm going to use 20-minute mud. And there's a reason for it. So here's my 10-inch knife. With the blade at a very close angle to the wall. I'm going to pull hot mud over the tape, over that tape, to fill in the gap created by the edge of the tape and the rest of the wall. We're not concerned about this right here. We're really not. This is the issue. This is what's going to flash this seam when you paint it. Watch. Concentrate on the center of my taping knife. We want to fill in that space. So that light doesn't get trapped there. If light gets trapped there, you know what happens? That's what you're going to see. These are all hot spots. The way to hide a seam is to think about what's going on here. Are we building up the wall by adding joint compound? Yes. Are you telling me that you're creating a hump here? Yes. Are you telling me that you can hide the hump? Yes. And how is that? The reason why you see seams on drywall finishing is because light is hitting parts of the seam at different angles, which causes shadows. If you look behind a mountain, you'll see a shadow. If the light cannot get trapped on my seam by a drastic increase of height, that's drastic. If I raise this up, you're going to see it because you've substantially increased the distance between the wall and the top of the surface. That looks black, doesn't it? Right there. But it's not black. That's a white wall. The reason it's black is it's a shadow. It's not black. This is white joint compound, but it looks black. By the way, it doesn't look black over here, does it? That looks white. Why is that? The sun's coming in over here, hits this, gets trapped here. There's no light that can get in. The light's hitting directly against this, it's white, it's black over here. The point is, if you make a hump out of your seam that doesn't allow the light to gradually go up and gradually go back down, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get that. And we want to avoid that. So the reason why we're gonna use 20-minute mud here is because 20-minute mud shrinks less, a lot less. And what you're seeing here is the profile of the mesh. Because when the water evaporated, the density of our joint compound shrunk. We don't need that happening. We got to get out of here. So we're going to use 20-minute mud that won't happen to, okay? Okay. Here we are on a different day. We last finished off on a Friday. And you can see the issue I was referring to in my last segments about shrinkage. This is now showing you what I was talking about the ridge, right? So we have to fill this in, and we're going to do it with hot mud. Hot mud doesn't shrink as much, it's more dense. Hey, you really want to get fancy, folks? Go out and get yourself diamond plaster. If you guys are good finishers, you know, with the taping knife, my channel is basically geared for do-it-yourselfers for the most part, unless I state otherwise. But for those of you who are advanced in the skim coating and you guys can do it without sanding it, I don't sand my skim coats for the most part, especially when I'm skim coating to put wallpaper on it, right, like over here. But if you're good, go out and get yourself diamond plaster. You'll spend less time fixing this. Diamond plaster literally has plaster in it, just like they used to put on plaster and lath. Try to clean your tools and you'll see it is a different compound than joint compound. Okay, it sticks to your tools like cement. And I believe there is Portland in it. It's very hard. And I use it on jobs where I have to fill in terrible knockdown texture, which is a 3/16 of an inch sometimes thick. So, you know, I can't be bothered with 20-minute mud that dries quickly. I work alone a lot because workers today, they don't want to do a great job. They just want to do a good job. And so, you know, I am geared to doing the best of my ability, and I'm not going to be encumbered by, there's a slang term for it, but I don't like to use that type of language on my channel. It starts with half, and the next word starts with an A and ends with a D. So I don't like to do that. So anyway, long story short is this. Get yourself some diamond plaster, but now if you're not good with skim coating, get yourself joint compound and keep skim coating over this. Over the weekend, I got a nice email from a lady who gave me a 5-star review on my channel on Google, and she said, hey, look what I did based on your videos. And I gotta tell you something. I mean, this young lady skim coated. She never skim coated before. What that tells me is, first of all, that you can do it. And secondly, that the time that I spend doing these videos is paying off for somebody out there. What I hate to see is so-called professionals come into people's homes, mess their floors up, mess up their houses, and then they want to get out and get paid. When the homeowner, see, this is what I found in my situation, the homeowner can do just as good a job if they knew what tools to use and what materials to use. You know what it is? The good job comes from the heart. If you want to do a good job on something that is reasonably within your reach, I'm not going to be able to play Mozart, but I can paint and I can skim coat, you know? The reason why I started skim coating is because some skim coater told me this is an art. And he looked at me as if I were crazy to even think I could do it. That was a long time ago. So I want you to do a great job and be very happy with the work that you achieve yourself. If you like the product that I'm hanging, it's made from Norwal in Canada. And those are the specs on it. The purpose of this video is to demonstrate, in rare circumstances, how you can hang wallpaper over wallpaper. I do not recommend indiscriminately hanging wallpaper over wallpaper. I only recommend hanging wallpaper over wallpaper in such circumstances as the following. Number one, that the wallpaper over which you desire to hang your new paper is a wallpaper that can be covered with other wallpaper. I realize that raises questions, but I want you to know that you cannot just wallpaper over just any wallpaper. And so, rule number one is that the wallpaper over which you desire to hang new wallpaper is structurally sound. The edges are part of the wall. They are not coming up, they are not peeling. And you can hang wallpaper over it without seeing any vestiges of the wallpaper underneath, such as textured wallpaper. If you take your fingernail and drive it into the wall, do you see a fingernail mark? If you do, do not hang wallpaper over that wallpaper. If you have grass cloth, you cannot hang wallpaper over grass cloth. You need to take it down. If you have commercial vinyl, you can hang wallpaper over that. But you'll be paying the price when you go to take it down. You can hang wallpaper over wallpaper. Hotels do it routinely. They have financial projections, and when they want to just quote unquote spruce up the hotel every 5 to 7 years, they call you in as an installer and they say, we want to go over this. This is our 5-year remodeling. And so they will cut expenses by simply going over the wallpaper. But you're not going to hang this product over commercial vinyl. That stuff expands, contracts, and what you'll have is a moving substrate if you should put this on there. You never see the movement, but you can imagine what will happen if you hang wallpaper, which is a solid, right? And then you go over vinyl, which is moving with heat and cold. What you'll see is that the seams here will start to prematurely separate because the material underneath it is militating against pure adhesion. So those are 3 examples. A couple came to mind after one of my last videos about this stuff, but let me just think, oh, here's another one. Flocked wallpaper, a rare breed today indeed. Flocked. What is flocked? It has fuzzy on it. You know, I had a G.I. Joe doll when I was a kid, right? And his head was like fuzzy. I loved the doll and the smell of it. You have any toys from your childhood that you remember? This G.I. Joe turned at every major joint, the wrist, the elbow. Anyway, if it's fuzzy, it's flocked paper. You cannot go over that. Okay, luxury vinyl. Luxury vinyl is notorious for having what I call a marshmallow-like shell. And that is simply a shell that makes impressions because it has a 1/64 of an inch raised texture. And therefore, textured wallpaper, you don't want to go over. Flocked wallpaper is textured. Luxury vinyl is textured. They use it a lot in the UK. So the point is that it's raised textured wallpaper because it's designed to hide bad walls. Bad walls. And so if you have kind of like cracks on plaster and lath walls, which is very common in the UK, from the friends who share information with me from the UK. And so if you have luxury vinyl, guess what? It hides a lot of that. You can't wallpaper over that. I think like a lawyer. Technically you can. It's gonna look like garbage if you do, okay? A lot of times people say, can I do that? I have to answer honestly. I say, yeah, you can. Yes, you can do that, but you don't want to do that. So can you do it? Yes, but you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. Okay? So you have to make a determination. If you have vinyl wallpaper, you don't want to be wallpapering over this. I said in one of my last videos, don't wallpaper over vinyl, but I realized I have to put a qualifier in that. Yes, we hang wallpaper over wallpaper in hotels and commercial places all the time. But hey, if this is your home, you don't want to be wallpapering over vinyl. Get that stuff off the wall. Vinyl should rip down pretty easily, even if it's painted, you know, because it's constituted well, it's strong. Once you start pulling at it, it should come down in big sheets. So you have to make that determination. If you're in question about it, send me a text, send me a notification through YouTube, and I will try to answer it to the best of my ability. Now let's start hanging this. So this is my wall, right? I did some repairs here. I made my lines where my seams are gonna fall. So now I have to cover this patch because this is now microscopically, this is a bunch of dust to the new wallpaper. And when you try to attach wallpaper to this dust, it's not gonna stick. Oh, it'll stick when you put it on and go home, you get paid. Then you get a call back by Monday. Hey, I got a big patch here. And what'll happen is your wallpaper will dry at a disproportionate level than this over here and this over here. And what you'll get is a permanent wrinkle. Because as the paper was drying, and pulling against the wall and slightly shrinking. Not shrinking, making the seams visible, but shrinking on itself, getting tight against the wall. This will not be doing it. And what you'll have is a moving part here, so that when you nail it down, you come back and say, oops, I messed up, you nail it down. You'll have a wrinkle around here because this area didn't shrink in proportion with the rest of it around it. And so you definitely want to prime this, definitely. So you want to hide the seams, right? Well, let's do a little catechesis on hiding seams. Question number 1, which of the following methods will be most efficient for the second coat to hide this seam? Is it A, do I go right over the middle? Or do I start just to the left and just to the right of the middle? And do the same over here. Is it A, or is it B? Here's our center, here's our tape. Do we let this dry and then deal with the center? Or do we let this dry and deal with the edges to the left and the right, including the center? What do you think? Well, in my professional experience, this is the way to go. Because what do you see in the middle there? Have you taped before? And then you sand and you see this dreaded result? That's what I got when I did it like this. Right here. In fact, if you look close, you can see the air coming out of that mesh, right? Which will happen over here when I hit the middle. But you see the ridge, you see that 64th of an inch or better, right there? When that dries, that's going to give me a wonderful edge against which to drag my blade and fill this in that thick. And it's feathered. This hump is feathered 10 inches right now. After we're done, you know we're gonna bring it over a little. Yes, it's a lot of work, but what else are you gonna do? 10 inches now, when we're done over here. In fact, maybe I'll skim coat the whole wall so that we can hide this. But that's what you're looking at, okay? I'm gonna fill this in now when it dries. That's why I wanna use 20-minute mud here so that it doesn't shrink. I need it to stay thick so I can fill it in. Now, when I fill it in, I'm gonna have a nice space there. Look. You see that? I'm gonna have a space. And this will hide, naturally speaking, far more easily than this type of finish. Just a suggestion. By the time you get to the end of the wall, you'll have this appearance. And so now we'll let this dry. And the idea is that we're building up both sides of the seam in order to fill in the center. What I will likely do is then do a level 5. Join all of the areas on the wall and make it a new skin altogether. Here's why. This is going to be painted. You saw what the oil base leaves us with, right? Let's fill that in. It doesn't take a heck of a lot of time, and we'll make the wall perfectly flat. Okay? Here's our wall. These are our seams. Now, remember I told you there were 2 ways to go about this, and I prefer the one over the other? Let me show you what I'm talking about. So you build up both sides of the seam, and then you go over this. Do you see how we're now ready to put one more coat over this? I'm going to be using the plaster. You can choose to do it this way. In the center here is your tape. I don't see much of it because I went a little thicker. Okay? But I believe that if you build it up on both sides, you won't overbuild in the middle because you'll be guided by the mesh. And once you hide it, you're done. What we finishers tend to do is overload. And then when you look at the wall like this, you see a bunch of humps. And you see this in a lot of commercial places, right? Okay, let's get to skim coating this wall with our diamond plaster. Okay, using joint compound, I filled in the entire wall. The spots you're looking at are variations of drying and wetness. Okay? This will need a very light sanding after I'm done, and I will be using my brand new Festool Planets drywall sander to quickly go about the business of sanding this. When you see the finished product, you'll see a nice universally flat surface because I joined every square foot by plastering over it with this compound. And so under this, there's mesh tape, but on the side of it, there's joint compound to avoid the ridge appearance. And so we'll check that out when we're done. I'll fill in here, and then I'll move on to these walls over here. But first I'll show you a little bit about the skim coat technique. Using a caulk, moist joint compound. If it's too thick, if it starts drying while you're holding it, it's very hard to move it around with this. So I advise you to use a spray bottle to douse it with a couple of spritzes as you do the work. The angle I'm using to apply the skim coat is about 5 degrees. See, I keep it close to the wall, which allows me to put it on thick. If I put it on thick, I know that it's all covered. In other words, I don't have any bald spots. Whenever I teach someone how to do this, they always make the mistake of going too thin. So here's what they'll do. They'll take it and then put it on thick, and then they'll skip. It's thick up here. And I suspect that if you're new at this, you might do the same thing. When you put it on 3/16 of an inch, good for you. Now, using only one side of the blade, See how I put my finger there? Some people used to. I can't get a good grip on it if I do two. So I do one. I go up at the top and I drag it down. Now watch the angle. Look at the angle on me. See that angle? It's not like this anymore. It's like this. See that? It's a 45-degree angle. Now, see this mark in the middle? Watch this. I go up. I don't make a mark on the right-hand side because I've dragged it sufficiently close to eliminate its thickness. Lastly, when I went up here, I went on the dry part. Very important. Let me show you why. Okay? If I start on the wet part, I make an impression there. So, I start where it's dry and then smooth into where it's wet. Our room is done. I will put the fan on, circulate the air. This will dry. And we will proceed to seal this compound finish with a sealer, not a primer. We will seal as opposed to prime the surface you're looking at. Now this is without sanding. It's very smooth, but we're going to join the surface by using a very fine drywall sander, which has a HEPA vacuum and won't get any dust anywhere else. Okay, we seal it by penetrating the joint compound with a thin liquid. And we will be using the equivalent of guards, G-A-R-D-Z. Guards will allow you to then paint or hang wallpaper or whatever you want to do. But it's a very good way to lock this down and paint. Some folks would just skip that and go right to a PVA primer, which I don't recommend that you do, or perhaps even Zinsser 123. I like using the things that I have readily available with me all the time. And so my go-to is going to be the equivalent of guards. As we wait for the walls to dry, we're now going to caulk with clear caulking all around here, 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 here. Because we have wallpaper underneath this beautiful skin of plaster. And so we want to apply clear caulking to seal the wall. Okay, you know how you put molding over sheetrock and that finishes off the sheetrock, right? Well, if we have this beautiful new skin, it's vulnerable right there. Air, moisture can get underneath our wallpaper over time and then begin to curl the wallpaper. And in 3 years, you'll say, what is this? So you want to seal it forever. And that'll keep it down. You can see where I have left the mesh tape, marking every one of my seams here. Okay? And so this is really the way to go. If I am here to revolutionize the way people think about wallpaper. If some imprudent contractor comes and is too lazy to prepare your walls properly, you have to go to what I call Plan B. You cannot spend 2 days removing wallpaper in a bedroom. They can't pay you enough to do that. They really can't. I mean, it's not worth it. They should get somebody to come in and re-sheetrock with the amount of money that it's going to cost a professional to remove the wallpaper. Let's face it, every wallpaper can come down. You can just scrape it off. Literally, you can scrape it off. But when that is the case, you just resort to plan B, which is this. I can't stress enough, if the wallpaper can come down, it must come down. Because if it can come down and you're putting oil-based primer and you're putting plaster on top of wallpaper that can come down, you're going to pay for this. Because it's going to bubble, it's going to get loose. This wallpaper would not come down. It's literally so thin and so stuck to the wall. It's part of the wall. No need to resurrect the paper and take it off. So this is the plan. I'm using clear from Sherwin-Williams, clear from DAP. Doesn't matter, interchangeable. Don't forget the corners of each room. 4 corners, caulk 4 corners. We wallpaper hangers cut our corners. So you definitely want to caulk inside there. Why? Because it's cut. Air and coldness will get in there and give you a problem if you forget where it is you need to caulk. Okay. Nice and thin application. Have yourself a nice clean cloth and make it smooth. No ridges here. Okay. Proper preparation for what we're talking about in this video is essential to the success of your project. Now, this is the bathroom to the bedroom that I'm doing. I determined after this 25-minute episode, after having soaked this shower stall area for over an hour, trying to get it off over here and over here, that it wasn't worth it to the customer or to me to try to get this down. It's simply attached to the wall. Something was not done correctly, and most likely it was because it was not prepared properly under the wall. And so we come to an area of excessive moisture. Now, this is precisely why I am telling you that it is essential that you caulk the area where wallpaper meets trim, crown molding, or in this case, the backsplash area of the sink. So what we're going to do is determine where exactly this breach, how far it is, and we're simply going to cut it out completely. Because remember, your plaster on top of your wallpaper is only going to be as sound as the surface over which you're placing your joint compound skin. And so I'm looking up in corners and I'm looking for breaches, and I see plenty that need my attention before I put my oil-based primer. I'm checking all corners, all seams at the top. Okay? And we're going to be successful. And this is going to last for years. And folks, this is the only way to do it when the wallpaper won't come down. Okay? The only way to get this wallpaper down is to get a scraper that has a handle. It's about 15 inches long On the top of it, it has a handle. On the bottom of it, it has a handle. 2 hands hold on to the scraper as you push down against the wall and dig. That'll get it off. And then you'll be doing what I'm telling you you have to do if you simply leave it up, which is to skim coat. Okay, you want to rip this off? Go right ahead. Try to scrape this off, create a completely uneven mess, and then you'll be stuck skim coating. I'd rather the do-it-yourselfer leave it up, skim coat him or herself, rather than having to learn the hard way trying to skim coat over a severely damaged wall. Please trust me, this is the best way to go. In this case, we're paying particular attention to the integrity of the paper up against these areas that bear moisture. I don't like any of it. Okay, I'm gonna take this off. Look, okay. It's a great procedure to go this route, but you have to be very careful that you're not creating a liability for yourself with callbacks. A callback can set you back 4 hours. That's half a day's pay. What's a callback? Hey, I have 2 inches of wallpaper that's loose. Look, folks, look at this. This, let's put it nicely, ignoramus who put this wallpaper up. Do you see what he put it on? Do you see this? It's plaster. It's plaster. And so the moisture has caused it to just lift right off. You know, come on, you know, I can tell it wasn't prepared. It's craziness. See, this is sound, so that's why we're gonna caulk this, so that air cannot get in this crack right here. See that? All right. Come down here. We see a mess. Okay. Make it a general rule. Let's just cut it. Now in this room, we're for wallpapering, and since we can't get this off efficiently, we're going over this after we prepare it for receiving new wallpaper. So you want to get all this loose stuff off. All right? Now to get the walls in order, I'm going to be using my Festool Planex. I call it the Planex, some people call it Planex. Let's hear from the German company. What is it? Planex or Planex? Anyway, this is a very sophisticated drywall sanding tool. If you're interested in it, it is the CT36E. And there are several on the market, but I got the high-end one because I want to be able to do sanding if I need to in a suit so that the dust doesn't get anywhere. I ordered several sanding discs. This is a 220 and it's hook and loop. So it's like a typical drywall sander that you might rent in the sense of setting it up. You have the vacuum, and then you have the hose, and then you have the drywall sanding extension. Some people attach their own vacuums to those products they rent. This is an all-in-one. This is a very good tool, and if you're doing this for a living, I suggest that you consider getting it so you can do your sanding efficiently and with minimal dust. So there you have it. 300 square feet of space, sanded down in about 12 to 15 minutes tops on medium speed. Okay, so let me take you up close. Now, are you a good skim coater? Well, if you are, this is your tool. Oh, you want to go nice and gentle. Now, are we done? Almost. We're going to go around with a light. I'm going to flash a light, close angle, and we're going to see any imperfections, not from the sander, but from me, where I need to fill that in. And then we're going to dust it off, because you can't do anything with this. Okay? Do you know how many contractors leave the dust on? A lot of them, especially in new construction. So if you've purchased a new house and your paint is blistering, it might be because you got a bit of sand underneath your paint. Very, very likely cause there. Or if your wallpaper isn't sticking, check out what's under it. It might just be a sloppy prep job. Okay, so you got the really fancy drywall sander and you think you've done a great job. Now we have to go around with a light. I suggest you get a light that goes on your head, or you get one of these. And now we can just check out how well we actually did. Let's take a look. How does this wall look without the light on it? Pretty good, right? But now let's put the light on it. Do you want to be perfect? Use the light. And then you just go around with your light and you fill in those areas that need your attention. Now, guess what? Here's a little trick. If you do it like this, you don't have to sand it again. That's now perfect. Okay? Those little areas. See that? Now, don't keep going over those areas. Here's why. When you do this, you're creating heat because of friction. It starts to cook the plaster. It starts to dry. Watch. And this is what you get. Watch this. Just watch. See that? If you start getting that, you're cooking your plaster. Then you start feeling it dry on your knife, and then you create a ridge. Please don't do that, okay? You see? It's now drying because you put so much heat there. So I do this for you so that you don't do it to yourself, all right? 1 or 2 swipes, that's it. And you'll make your wall perfect. Guys are saying, oh, Spencer, this is too much work. Either light will do, but I prefer the one overhead to free up your hands. So after I used my Planex, my Festool drywall sander, I filled in with joint compound again, any imperfections. And then, of course, I used the same primer, which was the Kills 2. And now that it's drying, I'm now going to put 2 coats of my latex paint over there, using the same rules of application that I demonstrated in a recent video called Paint a Room Like a Pro, Spencer Colgan. And so you might want to take a look at that if you're interested in do-it-yourself painting. There's lots of tips and tricks for any new painter to sink his or her teeth into. Since I had the tape on for several days now, I had to cut it along the point at which the tape meets the wall. But you just can't freehand it and do this. You're gonna wind up crooked. And so I took a plastic wallpaper smoother. And you can do this with a 10-inch taping knife, a 6-inch taping knife, etc. But what I like about this is that it's thick. If you use a taping knife, it's going to be very sharp, and there's a benefit to making it fatter. I want that color onto my trim in an even way. And since this is 1/8 of an inch thick, it does that perfectly. If you use a scraper, you might cut against the wall because it's so thin. And so there's my line right there. Okay. We hung the wallpaper first. There was wallpaper in the room. Customer wanted it down. I started on this wall to get it off because I wanted to wallpaper this wall. The wallpaper made it cost prohibitive both for me and for the customer to remove it. It was coming off like Band-Aid strips. Then we went to plan B. We covered it with an oil-based primer, Kills. Let that dry. Then we skim coated over the wallpaper, not only here, but all of the walls. And as we skim coated, we put mesh tape on all of the seams that you can no longer see. After we did that, we used hot mud so that it wouldn't shrink. And then we coated it twice more and then gave the wall a level 5 finish, which is that we put compound over every square inch of the wall, joining the already painted surface with all of the taped seams, and we made it one new skin. And that's what we did all around. Then we primed it. We used Kills too. Then we brought the Planex HEPA filter vacuum and we sanded down our walls, all of them. And then we did a polish coat. We went around and looked for the imperfections with a light and then filled them in. Then we put Kills 2 over that. Put our fan on the walls, let it dry, and then we put 2 coats of latex paint on these walls. 2 coats. I hope you like the job. You know what? It's worth it. When you can look at the job afterwards and you can say, wow, beautiful. I did this. If you're the do-it-yourselfer, you can do this. You can do it. Room by room. Step by step. The truth of the matter is if you get somebody to do it, they're not going to put the love that you're going to put into it. Try to do it yourself. You may surprise yourself. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, click on like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one.